And every single blasphemy case that we investigated, there was one political party behind it that had instigated it, the Sipahi Sahaba Pakistan, and it is their affiliates which are still involved in this. The Asia Bibi case, the case of the Christian woman who was convicted and sentenced to death for blasphemy in November 2010, sorry. That case, again, it was registered 3 or 4 days after the supposed incident had taken place, a few days after that argument in which she had said whatever she's alleged to have said, right? So that those 2 or 3 days are very crucial, because if somebody is really like, suppose I've really offended you, in an argument, why will you wait 3 or 4 days to go register a case unless you have some malafide, intentions? Somebody comes and instigates you. David, you should go and instigate a case because this is what's going to get her, and then this is how you will ensure your place in heaven. And it takes time, to work on that. So 3 or 4 days later, the case is registered. So she's in prison, and the whole atmosphere becomes so charged, and it's incredible that in that charged atmosphere, a man who was dismissed from the special branch, where he was working as security, in a security position, was dismissed for his extremist views, is assigned to the guard detail of a VIP target who is being openly accused of blasphemy and against whom there are people targeting him. And Mumtaz Qadri, the murderer of Salman Taseer, was dismissed for his extremist views just a few years before, I think 2 or 3 years before, and he asked for this guard duty. You don't give a guard duty to somebody who asks for it, especially in a VIP situation. And then when he fired those shots, why did the other guards not open fire as per standard operating procedure? Because he had told them, he said, don't shoot, I'm going to surrender. But that's not how you do it. That's not how it works in VIP situations.
You mentioned the case of Asia Bibi. In 2002, there was the infamous case of Mukhtar Mai. She was gang raped. That did receive some international attention, and she has survived and is, I believe, teaching in a girls' school. Well, what do you know about the background of that case, and what happened to the perpetrators?
But she started this girls' school. She's not teaching there. And she wasn't accused of blasphemy. Had she been accused of blasphemy, she might not be able to continue living where she's living and doing the work that she does, for one thing. Because that case again, I think, is similar to Asia's in a certain way because of the class element. So Mukhtar Mai belongs to the poorest, the lowest, quote unquote, lowest level of of village strata in the village society, and there's a situation where the perpetrators belong to a more powerful, higher class. It's not that they are richer particularly. They also live in a mud house. I've seen that house. I've been there. I made a documentary film on her actually, and I went and visited her there. And it's online on my YouTube channel. But so some years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, perhaps when her brother was abused by those people, he might have just taken that abuse. Okay. Now he says that no, I'm going to go to the police, and so then they fabricate this case against him that he's having an affair with one of their sisters, and so in revenge they're going to rape Mukhtar Mai. So a village council then is held, and they say this is what we want to do, and the villagers say no, we don't agree with this. This is not right. And then they suggest, the time-honored tradition of, well, why don't you just marry her? Let him, if your sister is having an affair with her brother, let them just get married, and you marry her. And they summon her. She comes to the village council. Most of the village council is left by then because they're fed up of the argument, but some of the people are still around. And she comes and she expects that she's just going to have to put her dupatta, her veil, she will put it over her at the feet of the man who is accusing her brother and ask for forgiveness, and he'll put it back on her head and she'll be allowed to go, which is how it usually happens. So women are used like that for peacemaking, treaties within villages, communities. Instead of which they drag her into a room and they sexually assault her. Now, maybe not as many people assaulted her as was reported in the police report. Maybe she wasn't stripped completely naked as was reported. They did tear her clothes off, but not all of them. But in village culture, if your legs are exposed, they say that you're naked. So that was that case. They spent a lot of time in prison, the perpetrators, in and out of prison, and eventually they were acquitted after many, many years, but during which they had spent a lot of time in prison already. So she was of course very upset by that, but then a lot of that acquittal had to do with the way the evidence was presented, with the wrongly written police report, which often happens, and in any case, they had been in prison for so many years and all of that. So that's that case. And what happened when her case got international attention, in that situation, many women would just have committed suicide because of the loss of honor. And that's what she told me that she had planned to do also. She was going to drink poison, and her family, they were all sitting there waiting to drink poison. And then a journalist and the village priest came up to them and said, don't do that, let's go register a case, and because I don't know what the political motives there were, but they felt that they could, make a case out of this. So when her case became public and people started giving her money and the government gave her money, she didn't use that money for herself. She used it to buy some land on which she built a girls' school. That's the girls' school that she herself then attended, and she studied up to 4 grades, I think. So she's up to that much illiterate. She might have studied more by now. I don't know. So that's her story.
A cricket star turned politician, Imran Khan, has a political formation called Tehreek-e-Insaf, the Justice Movement, Justice Party. He's been drawing large crowds all over Pakistan. What are his political prospects in your view?
Well, we don't know. We'll have to see when the elections come. What he's done, the good thing is, he's energized a lot of the young people and brought them into the political arena where they were apathetic and had given up on politics. Now, how many of those actually register to vote and how many of those vote and actually vote for him, we'll see when the polls come. If he comes in to power, then he will find that the world is not as black and white as he likes to paint it, and that the world of politics involves compromises and negotiations, and that sticking to high principle is not always the best way to go forward to really make long-term changes. And I think that's what he'll find out as he comes in. But clearly he's supported by other forces than the young people who are so selflessly following him, young and old people who are, following him. And by those forces, there's a lot of talk that the intelligence agencies are behind this sudden projection of Imran Khan, because it's not just he's drawing large crowds, but he also has been getting a lot of media attention, and a lot of it might just be that's what journalists do. They see the next rising star and they do that, but we don't know. It seems to me that he has other backing, which he denies.
There are constant reports of widespread and growing anti-American sentiment in Pakistan. Do you give credence to those reports?
Well, yes, because Pakistanis see America as having played a double game for all these years. America has given Pakistan a lot of money, but America has also supported Pakistani military dictators. America has also, given money to Pakistan's military. And this anti-Americanism is something that is, I see it as actually being part of this whole blasphemy movement issue, because it's something that's being whipped up by the extremist parties because they see it as an easy way to whip up frenzy. Because when people feel that they are being victimized and they feel desperate, it's much easier to blame an outside power than to look inwards and try and see what's wrong within. It's much easier to just blame everything on America. It's a very easy, thing to do.
Well, it's clear that the U.S. drone attacks are intensely unpopular. They've resulted in the death of numerous civilians, and this criticism of U.S. policy reaches a fever pitch in November 2011 when more than 24 Pakistani soldiers are killed in a U.S. drone attack.
Yes, absolutely. That is true, and that is inexcusable, unpardonable, and all of that. But we are at war. We are fighting a war, and we are supposed to be on the same side. And there are. I mean, if this is friendly fire, which I believe America has apologized for, and there have been other incidents of friendly fire. I don't see this as the biggest thing, and I also have spoken to people in areas affected by the drones where they don't see the drones as the worst enemy. Their worst enemies are the Taliban, and their worst enemies are the Pakistan army. They're caught between the Pakistan army and the Taliban, and they actually see the drones as the ababil, as the swallow, the helpful bird that comes and knocks off some people. And I've heard people say that the drone, and also I think it was, I forget who it was who pointed this out, but the drone attacks have killed maybe, well, we don't know because we don't know that the area is restricted. You can't go and get figures, but let's say conservatively 3,000 people or more the drones have killed. Compare that to 30 or 40,000 people killed by the Taliban and their allies in Pakistan's marketplaces, schools, offices, security installations. Why is there not more outrage against them? Why about the drones, which are actually part of our fight, trying to help us? And yes, there's collateral damage, but yes, it's war.
Poetry plays a big part in Pakistani culture. In 2011 marked the centenary of the great Urdu Pakistani poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz.
That's right, and it was celebrated around the world, including in India. And Faiz's words still inspire, Pakistanis and others. And I believe that those words were used in Occupy. They've been in Occupy movements in the United States and in Egypt also. I heard. I don't know that.
Particularly his poem "Bowl," which speak.
That speak for your lips are free. Yes. And actually, Bowl is also the title of a film that has become very popular in Pakistan. It's called Bowl, that focuses on transvestites and gender issues and the population issue actually.
And there's a kind of alternative cafe in Lahore called Bowl as well.
That's right. Yeah, I believe that's doing quite well. Yeah.
Thanks.